This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, I request everyone to please mute themselves. It just helps us focus and stay connected to the conversation and not your interesting background sound. Thank you so much. All right. So we've been on a journey with our traveler and his co-traveler, his newfound apprentice, who's trying to decipher the magic behind the traveler's words, or this power that he has, or the skill that he has, this special quality that makes him befriend anyone and everyone, anywhere and everywhere, no matter where he goes. Now, this traveler is very certain that he's not going to give away all his tricks just immediately, because he wants his co-traveler, his younger traveler, to observe, to learn from his surroundings, and truly understand the gift of what he does, or discover it for himself. So he sat next to the river, and the young traveler kept looking at the ripples on the river. The traveler looked at him and said, "Is there something that you want to ask me?" The younger traveler said, "Yes. I don't know, why don't you teach me anything? You're saying that this, whatever you have, the power, the magic, it cannot be taught. But it can be. You tell me what to tell people. You told me that they have needs, and if I give them what they need, they will be happy, they will find joy. But tell me, what do they need? Tell me, how do I find that right thing to tell them? Tell me what to tell them after they have heard my piece, after they have told me about them, about their feelings, about their experiences. What can I tell them that's going to make them feel good? You're not teaching me anything. Well, what I do cannot be taught, because my words work in mysterious ways. You see, my words travel to my listeners through their ears, into their heart, into their soul. It pokes them, it prods them, it provokes them, it enlightens them. It makes them discover the world, it makes them see the world differently. I don't tell them what to think. I just give them a few things to think about. And when they think with freedom, when they play with it, when they decipher for themselves, they experience joy. But this can't be taught, my dear. You have to observe, try it out, and do it your way. Hello and welcome to day 4 of the Storied Way. It's a fantastic evening for us, because we are joined by some fantastic, amazing speakers. And there's a lot of anticipation from the audience, I know, who have come here just to listen to them. So thank you, Dr. Swati Vats, Vikramjit, and my very dear friend, Deeptha Vivekanad. Thank you so much for coming on. And a very special person in my life, who is Shikha Garg, who is going to be my amazing co-host today. I know she's going to do a great job. So over to you, Shikha. People have heard me over the last 3 days. Why don't you take over today?
Thank you, Ritupana. So welcome to the day 4 of Storied Way. And last 3 days, we have seen how stories flow, not just in the storyteller's heart, but in different people's way and different places. So it has been an amazing journey for me as well as a storyteller to listen to all the speakers in the past 3 days. And today we are entering into the world of storytelling in the classroom. And I am so delighted to introduce all the three panelists. I'm so excited because I've been following their work for a long time, and I really love to read about them. So our first panelist, Dr. Swati Popat Vats. Dr. Swati Popat Vats is an award-winning global educator with over 34 years of experience. She's a storyteller and a puppeteer, and loves to tell stories to children and adults, as she believes that stories are a rich source of language, cognitive, and socio-emotional development. She is an ardent fan of Gijubhai Badheka, who has authored more than 300 stories and promoted the concept of teaching through stories. She has co-authored India's first book on Gijubhai Badheka, titled Once Upon a Story. She has written more than 15 storybooks of children on topics ranging from animals, emotional skills, coding, and has given a new age relevant twist to many fairy tales like Goldilocks, Red Riding Hood, etc. So thank you, Dr. Swati Popat Vats, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our next panelist is Deeptha Vivekanand. Deeptha Vivekanand is a professional storyteller, trainer, and educator. Deeptha turned a full-time storytelling in 2009 after a career in corporate learning and development. Her interest in storytelling as a teaching learning methodology also drew her to find her voice as a performance storyteller. Through her venture, Ever After Learning, she conducts storytelling performances and workshops for children, young adults, and adults. Deeptha currently resides in Chandigarh, where she is a storytelling consultant at a CBSE school, working to integrate storytelling into the curriculum across all grades. She has also co-created an online training module titled Storytelling as a Pedagogy, commissioned by the CBSE. So thank you, Deeptha. And I really remember, my daughter still remembers your origami story. So it's great to have you over here. Our next panelist is Vikramjit Rooprai, and when I met him first time, of course, online, because for past 2 years we are online, and the way he explains stories and storytelling, I automatically had to Google his name and read about his work. So thank you, Vikramjit. So today I get the opportunity to introduce him formally. Vikramjit Singh Rooprai is an educator, author, and historian who left his 14-year-long IT career to turn into a teacher trainer. He established Heritage Shala to set up heritage labs in schools where students are taught routine subjects through liberal arts and by using examples from history. He is a 5-time TEDx speaker and a consultant to many government and non-government organizations. He is currently a visiting faculty member at the National Institute of Fashion Technology and associated with various school groups, helping them refine their curriculum and pedagogy. So welcome, Vikramjit Rooprai. So all three panelists. Again, now I'll go over to you, Rituparna. So we are ready to start our conversation.
Okay, thank you so much. And everybody, if you can, please keep your cameras on, because it's really nice to see more faces. The speakers would really like to see who are they talking to. Please do that. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's begin. Let's begin with a reality check. How many people in the audience today are CBSE school teachers? If you are, please raise your hand. I'd like to take a look. How many school teachers here? Okay, you can raise your digital hand if you don't want to switch on your camera. Okay, all right. 1, 2, 3. I can only see 2. Are there more? All right. If you are a CBSE school teacher, did you see the CBSE manual that Deeptha and I co-designed? Are you aware of that? Vinati? No. That's it. In this room full of teachers, there are 49 participants. There are 2 teachers from CBSE, and they have not seen the course. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we are doing this, and that's why I pulled Deeptha into this conversation. Let's do a reality check. We have the NFP right there. We know that the course is available. We know we are supposed to teach through stories. We felt that storytelling pedagogy is going to take over the world in India. Everybody's going to start learning how to use stories in the classroom. Sometimes we are told that, oh yeah, we do a lot of storytelling. Let's go and ask Dr. Vats, what is the reality? Is storytelling being done in Indian classrooms?
Well, I'm first of all so happy that you are taking up this whole agenda of including stories in the classroom forward, because it's so necessary. And congratulations both to you and Deeptha for creating that module. I wish more and more teachers see that module and use that module. Well, the reality is that we have a story time in the curriculum, and then we have the curriculum. We don't know that dono ko merge kar sakte hain. We don't know that stories can actually teach the curriculum. And that is the sad reality, whether you go into an early childhood classroom or you go into a primary years classroom or a secondary and senior secondary. और उसमें भी एक hierarchy होती है. Early childhood teachers तो will spend 80% of their time telling stories. Then you have primary teachers who end up going from 80 to 40%. वो 40% तो stories बोलेंगे, you know. Then children go into secondary. वो 40% का क्या हो जाता है? 4%. 4% will maybe teachers may think of using stories because उनको लगता है ये तो बड़े बच्चे हो गए, बड़े बच्चों को stories से क्या लेना देना. But teachers forget, why is Bollywood so famous? Because it is a story. You know, why are tele series and these and Netflix series famous? There are stories, there are emotions, and they forget that. But if stories were brought into the classrooms, it would be a whole different story out there. The reality would really change. And stories are something that can capture a child's attention more than anything else in the world. And stories are that way of, you know, teaching children effortlessly without giving them that stress. And when done like that, it stays with them forever. You don't have to keep on doing revision, etc. So I think the reality definitely needs to change, and it will change only by people like us and people like all the listeners out there. That means kudos to them. That means they are interested in stories, and that's why they came in the evening to attend this talk.
Absolutely. And just one question while adding that, is it the teachers who are they stop telling stories? Is it the mindset of the education system that, oh, they don't need stories, let's not factor in? Because we know curriculums are designed. Teachers get together to have a yearly plan, a class by class plan and things like that. Sometimes it's done for the entire grade together. Sometimes teachers do it themselves. So is it like a mandate that the school says, okay, no time for stories, go straight exam oriented, take a curriculum, blah, blah, blah? Or is it just an understanding, an unsaid understanding that children don't need stories?
Is the question for me?
Yes, maybe. Yeah, I would like you to continue.
Yeah. So I think it starts right from the top head, the principal. Okay. If the principal is open to having a curriculum that is based on stories, then definitely things can happen. For example, let me give you 2 stories. One story is called A Grain of Rice, One Grain of Rice. It's a lovely story to teach children doubling, how to double figures in maths. The other story is 100 Hungry Ants. It's all about how you can break up a number into 2s, 5s, 10s. You know, we have the skip counting. Now, when we are doing these concepts in mathematics, we teach them as a concept. Today we are going to learn about doubling, and children's brains freeze because, you know, we stress them out that it's a concept. But had you started telling them the story about the 100 hungry ants and what the ants did throughout the story, you have actually taught them the concept. आपको वो blackboard chalk and talk method की जरूरत ही नहीं पड़ेगी. And that is what teachers need to understand. Maybe they don't have resources. Maybe they don't have ideas of how stories can be integrated in the curriculum. And I would like to urge everybody out there, We have forgotten. We think NEP mein stories aayi. 1932, there was a man called Gijubai Badeka. I'm talking pre-independence. He did an experiment, and that experiment is called Divya Swapna. I would urge all the teachers here today, download. It's a free document called Divya Swapna, and it gives you an idea of how he used stories in primary to teach geography, mathematics, everything through art and stories. How this man realized that if I want to teach children, the only way to capture their attention, their cognitive development is to use stories. So I think as teachers, when we feel that नहीं stories curriculum में नहीं use कर सकते हैं, stories are only for entertainment, we need inspiration. We need to know from people who have used it in the curriculum. That inspires teachers and principals, because I always believe an inspired teacher can convince a principal also. सबसे खड़ूस principal को भी एक inspired teacher convince कर सकती है. So it is important for us to inspire the teachers by giving them real life examples, by giving them, okay, these are the stories out there, these are the topics. That is essential.
Thank you, Dr. Swati. So Deeptha, I'll come to you, and Dr. Swati has given us two beautiful examples of the stories, and she has also talked about the power a teacher has. And you have co-created, co-designed the CBSE storytelling pedagogy along with Rituparna. And you've been training teachers around that. Do you really think that the stories are coming, and how much they are using it, and if they are if yes, then where and how are they using? So one point comes to my mind is it something like going into the classroom and just by adding once upon a time there's a garden, and in that garden there were two birds on one branch and there were two birds on another branch. Now how many birds are there? Do we really call that being used as a storytelling, power of storytelling? And is this actually happening on the ground?
Thank you, Shikha, and thank you, Dr. Swati, for really setting that context up so eloquently. Well, the module has been created. It's been lying there for the last few months. Unfortunately, it hasn't reached as many schools as we initially thought it might. That could be a function of just information gap, right? However, the reality is that, like you pointed out, the understanding of storytelling as an act and storytelling as pedagogy has to be understood. There's a distinction between the two, right? So it's great to go in and tell a story to entertain your students, but how do you put the story in the middle of or right at the center of the learning experience is where the challenge is. And we're seeing that most teachers struggle there because, look, let's be honest, they have not learned like this. Their education system, their socio-economic and cultural factors also inform the kind of educators that they have become today. And to add to it, if you have an unsupportive school system, well, why would a teacher be motivated to do anything beyond the textbook, right? So this is a systemic problem, right? So we have to start at the very basic. So yes, it's important to have storytelling skills, but it's very critical to understand how to use that story to teach that concept, and which is what the module goes on to detail. And it's not easy. I mean, I don't want to make any pretenses about the fact that it is something that needs to be learned and practiced till you get it right. So therefore, there's a need for, like Dr. Swati said, for the head of the school to be really open. And we have examples. There's a school in Bangalore which has actually created this whole body of stories for mathematics, and stories that children have created, because the principal herself is invested in the idea of using stories to teach. So where the top line is really open, then we see that percolates very easily. Where it isn't, and if it's only the teacher's battle to fight, then it's definitely not as easy as it would be in other cases. So I guess we have to look at this problem from multiple angles. It's not enough if that we've just built a course and put it there. We have to really understand why it is not, going into every school, and if it has, then what is the kind of response that it has got? What is stopping teachers from really taking this forward? We've got data that there are about 20,000 teachers who have taken the course. Now, we also know we put an assessment at the end of the course deliberately, which is to create a story-based lesson plan, because we wanted to create that kind of bank, right? But then that again calls for some work. So maybe with all the tasks that the teacher has through the day, this is another additional chore that she has to deal with. So unless it's part of the curriculum, unless it's part of the way in which a concept has to be taught in the school, this is going to be seen as an additional exercise for the teacher to do. So I think that's a big problem that needs to be solved.
Absolutely. Like, I totally relate to this, Deeptha. Like, we cannot put the entire onus on the teachers that they are not using it, because somewhere down the line we have to empower them, and then they will definitely evolve. So thank you, Deeptha, for giving that insight and the true reality, because ultimately we just blame the teacher is not using it in the country. Now, so I'll just, go to Vikramjit. Vikramjit, I know you have been using stories and you have established something like a heritage shala or a lab. Lab is all about experiments. So for the teachers, the biggest thing that they are using are the textbooks, and the stories in the textbooks we generally see are from the singular outcome. They talk about just either a moral or a single level approach. So can we just take out those stories out from the textbooks and can have multiple outcomes or an exploration methodology? So how do you use those stories, and how our teachers can or storytellers can use that story?
Well, first of all, I think the way we interpret a story or the definition of the word story, I have seen many people who think that if there is a storyteller, the person has to stand in front of the audience and say a completely well prepared or a narrated thing which has some meaning, in some cases even a moral of the story, which I personally feel is not required every time. But then we have an image of a story की story है तो कुछ ऐसा सा structure होना चाहिए. Whereas there is a story in everything. For example, Rituparna, the dress that she is wearing right now, there is Varli art on that, right, Rituparna? Now there is a very basic mistake in that art. So what Rituparna is wearing right now, there is a strip of Varli dancers or Varli characters. Whereas the Varli tribe near Mumbai, when they paint those images on their walls, they never put a single line. They never create those characters in a single line. It's either circle or a wavy thing. So there is an irregularity in that. And there is always a story in that. So basically, whichever house is working on that particular wall, they always do it on the wall. So when the ladies of the house, and this is done by the ladies. So when the ladies of the house are using rice, wheat, or lime to create that, what information they are passing, some recent incident from their house, something that has happened in recent past, or a message for the future. That's what goes on the walls. So, a story there may not be a storyteller standing in front of 20 people. It could just be a lady who was very happy today or very sad, and then she came out and she did something on the wall in her own way. Whosoever is reading gets to learn. So what I do in Heritage Shala is something similar. One more thing I want to add here is, it's not just the story to teach. Basically, since I also work with, or I primarily work with the social science faculty, when we say history, when it was being made, or whatever the people were doing back then, they were not doing it because they wanted to make history. At that time, they were just trying to solve a problem. So when I enter the classroom, instead of telling them a story about that incident back 1000 years ago, I just project a problem. I give them the problem and I give them some certain circumstances or a boundary to work within. And I have seen that in most of the cases, students come up with a solution which matches with what happened back then. And then I start my story. So what happens is they have already found out the solution to the problem. And now they know what happened 500 years ago was because of a reason. And probably there was no better solution given the circumstances and given the limitations. And then my story becomes more effective. So when to say, yes, we should teach through story, but that story need not come in the beginning of the session. It can also come at the end of the session once everything is done.
Right, absolutely. Like, and it's like when I say, when I understand from what you said is that stories does not mean that there is one thing and this is what story has to do. And I have to go in the class, tell a story, teach this concept or cover this concept and come back, rather than give that thought to the learners, and then the learners will figure out their own ways. So Vikramjit, what you said is so appropriate. So I will jump onto certain myths that a I will use that word technology here, because now we are online and doing stories here. So the storytelling, the entire thought process is the storytelling is for language learning. And I will love to you to answer this question, because you have been using story for very different subjects other than languages. So how much is this myth correct? Is this a myth or is this a fact?
There is a story everywhere. There may be a message or no message. How many of you like Tom and Jerry? There is a story, but there is no language. I mean, they don't have dialogue. Early Mickey Mouse, no dialogue. Pink Panther, the cartoon, no dialogue. Mr. Bean, no dialogue. But there is a story. There's always a story. And that's what so sometimes a story is just a bunch of emotions that we can connect with. And we feel better after that episode passes or while watching that episode. Sometimes you also get to learn from it. So I can enter a class and instead of picking up something very specific, maybe a kid asks me, sir, why are you wearing a turban which is so different? Well, actually, that's one question which I always get, that why is your turban so different from others? Well, I've got a 30-minute session just to explain my turban, and sometimes I can even pull it to 1.5 hours, or I can finish it in 30 seconds. So yes, it's a myth. And it's up to the storyteller how to play with the story.
Agreed. So this is how we understand how story. So on that note, I'll go to Deeptha. Another myth that we have been listening to in this is that to be a storyteller, you have to be really dramatic and you have to dance, like we were discussing earlier before this entire thing started. You have to be, So I heard one of the teachers ask me that I have to be a clown when I am teaching a concept in the classroom to become a storyteller. So you have been working on this with teachers. Like, do you really feel that this is like, let's clarify this concept today, that how does storytelling it's easy, it can be brought to the classroom?
Well, if being a clown comes naturally to you, then by all means, please channel your clown when you're in front of your students. That's only going to draw them closer to you. But if you are by nature a more reserved person, that doesn't really mean that you can't be telling a story, because there is really no one right or wrong way to tell a story, right? And also there is this myth that storytelling needs puppets, it needs visual aids. Yes, your storytelling will be greatly enhanced if you were to use these aids, but then again, it's not necessary, because you can be extremely effective with just your voice and your gestures and your expressions. That's good enough, if you ask me. Now that so typically when I do a workshop, there'll be all kinds of people, and when you see them perform their own stories, you will be able to actually identify what each person's strength is. And I think that's the strength that each one needs to work towards and build on in bringing stories to the classroom. So to answer the question about is this required? Certainly no, not at all. go ahead if you want to, by all means, but really try to connect with the story. I think that is important. Because as a storyteller, as an educator, if you don't find meaning personally in that story, then no matter what kind of props you use, it's going to fall flat. So if the story pulls at your heartstrings and moves you to, take it to your students, then you can tell it in a very plain way, and it will still make a difference, right? But what is required is for you to then arrive at that right story, for which you perhaps will have to go through hundreds and hundreds of stories till you find that right one that speaks to you. So that's where the work is. Using props and all of that comes much later. And if it's a skill that you feel you're drawn to, then yes, definitely invest in it. Because I would say using puppets and using props, or using something like story cards or the Kamishibai paper theater, they're all additional skill sets that you can keep building on. But focus initially on telling a story well, and the rest will automatically follow.
Yeah, very true, Deeptha. So like it's the right story, or it's the story that empowers you, not the delivery comes after you get the right story. And anyways, like we have been using, even a physics teacher, I think they use the lenses and the machines and the other things to show those experiments. So props or puppets does not mean those cartoon characters only. Anything that supports your story can be a prop. So
Yes,
great thing.
yes.
And I was just reading in the comments, Dr. Swati, you wrote that you have taken grade 9, you have taught through stories and puppets, and it really ignited that spark in those children. So that brings me to another myth, like stories are for kindergarten or primary school children, and stories are not once the child is in the secondary school, 6th or 7th, it is more about teaching, learning, academics, solving the problem, and the stories are not to be brought to them, and stories do not apply over there. So I would like you to talk about that myth for us.
So when I was a teacher, because people usually associate with me to the early years, because I've taken up the advocation of early years very strongly. But I have been a teacher myself, and I have taught up to the secondary level. And I always believed that children of any age want to learn if things are interesting. And we usually go with a textbook and a blackboard, and that we think that's it. That's all our arena as a teacher. I tried things differently when I was a teacher. I taught history through stories, and I taught poetry through stories. So this particular one, which I'm talking about, which children enjoyed the most, was a poem called Lochinvar, and it was for grade 9 students. And I asked the children first to read the poem, after which we identified the different characters in the poem. And I asked the children to make puppets. And while making the puppets, do a little research on finding out the kind of clothes that characters in that era would be wearing, etc. What kind of voice modulation would you like to have? And then present this puppet show by learning the poem. So the entire process was such that children didn't rote learn the poem. They had to go through each paragraph to understand which puppet and props to be used during this. So it was a kind of a project activity. They learned the poem, they understood the poem, they enacted the poem through puppets. I find puppets very interesting because even the most shy child participates, because in a puppet you are not in front of the class, you are the voice behind the puppet, you are the movement behind the puppet. And I did this because I was inspired from Gijubai. Gijubai used stories like this, and he wanted children to understand about different subjects, different topics, by making them involved in that topic or subject as a story. I think one of the most important things that we do is we trivialize the importance of stories as just entertainment. Let me give you an example of how Gijubai used it for developing higher order thinking skills. Because one of the most important excuses we have for using stories in the secondary class is that, oh, we have better things to be teaching them, and their brain is at a much higher level than of a pre-primary child. Let me tell you how Gijubai developed the higher order thinking skills in children. He would tell the story one day, and the second day he would retell the story by changing certain facts in the story, because he wanted to know whether the children were paying attention. Focus and self-control was developed. Children, when they hear a story, learn to take different perspectives. Each character is different. Each character's personality is different. So when you are involved in that story, Gijubai understood that children learn perspective taking, which is a higher order thinking skill. Communication. Of course, you are teaching children language through the story. Cognitive flexibility. There are emotions in the story. I have to move from the character feeling happy to the character feeling sad to the character feeling frightened. So, there is cognitive flexibility. My mind has to change. My emotions change one by one. Estimation of time. Gijuba used to do that, that he would say, how much time do you think is left now for this period? Oh, I think I'll have to now keep this story on hold for tomorrow. And that developed children's ability to defer gratification. Wait. They know they want something right now. They want to hear the end, but no, they will have to wait till tomorrow to do that. And then because they have waited till the next day, now they are developing working memory, because they have to remember where the story stopped, because he's not going to revise the story. He's going to start from where he stopped. So it is very, very important for us to understand when we teach teachers that these are the higher order thinking skills that are going to be developed in children. Teachers would start taking stories a little more seriously than what they are doing now. Two things, but I would like to tell teachers is to keep away from when they are using stories in their curriculum is, if you are teaching a story about Shivaji and it's part of your history lesson or any other history lesson, don't take the creative liberty of adding your own things to that story. Read up on Shivaji's personality and stick to that. Don't start adding jokes or stuff like that, because children are very perceptive. They realize when you are making a fool out of them through that story. So it is very, very important that you respect children's cognitive development when you are using stories in your curriculum. And secondly, I would strongly suggest to people, try not to link religion to your stories, because we have to understand we are a diverse nation and we would be having children of all religions in the classroom. Then if you are trying to use religion in a story, try to use every religion in a different story. But otherwise, these are the two things that I would tell teachers, that it would make you a successful storyteller and as a pedagogy, and not just as, entertainment storyteller.
So thank you so much. I mean, great takeaways, and I'm sure everybody's writing furious notes. You're not going to get a recording of this, so don't ask me. Don't send me little WhatsApp messages. Please, can you send us the recording? I want to listen again to what Dr. Vats said, or what was that point about that and this and whatever. Write your notes and stay alert. Dr. Vats, let's stay with the question of teachers, right? We know teachers are overworked. Somebody in the chat has just said government school teachers have to do so much of duty. We know even in private schools, teachers have a lot of work. And to be very honest, I have gone to schools where the school leadership has said, we want to change the way our teachers think, but we are very scared that the teachers will revolt. And the teachers did. So, we worked through an entire week or 2 week of residency of working with the children to get a buy-in from the children and the parents. So we did workshops with the children. We did several workshops with their parents. Parents were very eager that, wow, stories ke through bachcho ko padhaya jayega and all of that. But the teachers refused. You know why they refused? Because they said, isse to acha hum hi kar lete hain. Ye nahi chalega yahan pe. Ye middle class parents aake bolenge mere bacche ka grade kahan pe hai. Aap unhe kyun kahaniyon se hasa rahe ho? Ye time waste ho raha hai. The teachers refused, and the management actually said that I'm sorry, I cannot go past this wall. Because if I don't have my teachers say yes, No matter how much I will invest or whatever little or more I will, they will not change. So how do we, let's say, address the teacher community? We'll go to the leadership later. But I think the teacher community, where every teacher says that, yes, I want to work on myself. And I have had many teachers, school teachers, stepping out of their school, retired school teachers coming and learning storytelling from me. They telling me, Rituparna, 30 years I have taught in a school, and today I feel maine jhak mara 30 saal. If this is storytelling, so what was I doing for 30 years? So, that's a moment of regret, and that's a moment of great satisfaction that today, after retiring at the age of 60, she says that now I can still do good storytelling. So I don't want teachers to go through that. What can we do to inspire teachers?
Again, I would say all these problems are handled in the book Divya Swapna by Gijubai. He faced the same things. He faced resistance from the parents. He faced resistance from the other teachers. And at the end of the experiment, everybody understood what he was talking about. So number one, please read that book. Number two, I think if a principal is committed to bringing in change, she should tie up this whole thing to teacher appraisals, that we will be appraising you on these parameters now, and teacher appraisals should be tied up with your increments. That is the only way you can handle teachers who are resisting a change which is required in the curriculum. And lastly, you should have workshops with parents also to help them understand that what we are saying is not stories or grades. We are saying stories and grades. I think the mistake we do when we talk to people about stories or play-based curriculum, we say कि play करेंगे, stories सुनेंगे, grades नहीं मिलेंगे. No, we are not saying that at all. We are saying that your children will be able to do better in exams. Your children will get better grades because they would have understood the concept more easily and more quickly. And that is why when you are trying to change a school's or teachers or parents' mindsets, go prepared with 2 lesson plans based on stories and do a live demonstration for them. That see, these are the videos of children enjoying, and then we took an assessment with the children, and this is what the children learned after the story. When parents see these live proofs, no parent is going to tell you, ye mere bacche ke liye mat karna. At the bottom of every parent is a parent who wants the best for their child. And at the bottom of every principal is that principal who wants to become that Finland school. So it is very, very important for us to understand that we will have to work hard in trying everything we can in our grasp to bring about this change. Change को लाना है, यही हमको ठान लेना है. अब या प्यार से सिखाओ या थोड़ा स्ट्रिक्ट होके सिखाओ या उनके अप्रेजल में डालो, कुछ भी करो, लेकिन ये बदलाव लाओ, because it is necessary.
I think listening to you, I just had this great idea. Let's do hashtag stories for grades.
Yes,
for better grades. We should do that. Teachers will say
absolutely.
Yes. School
आप दिवस स्वप्न पढ़िए सब लोग, उसमें गीजूबाई का class did better than the other classrooms in the examinations, and Gijubai taught only through stories throughout the year. And that is what I'm saying. Here is a live example in front of us. 1932 में उस आदमी ने किया एक experiment. और हम लोग अभी एक वी आर फीलिंग कि नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में कुछ नया आया, कुछ नहीं. 1932 से देयर आर पीपल हु आर सेइंग बदलो बदलो बदलो, लेकिन हमको बदलना नहीं है.
Right.
Yeah. So very rightly said, Dr. Swati, that right now it is we teachers, or right now the generation of teachers, we have to become the change makers and we have to believe in that concept ourselves, and then we can convince others with a strong determination. So on that note, Deeptha, honestly, we need to agree that teachers are doing a great job to bring that change, but they are also facing problems at their end, like the lack of availability of content, with stories, where to find the right stories. The stories right now are not organized in any form. And like we discussed in the textbooks, the stories are on the single outcomes, and most of the time the textbook stories, bringing out those stories is a big challenge out of the textbook. So how do you suggest the teachers can go and find the stories, the right resources? Because as a storyteller, this is my challenge as well. So now we are talking about a teacher who is handling the technical part of that subject and adding more stories to it. So how do that challenge they can overcome?
Right. So I'll give you the example of when I started off, working as a storytelling consultant with the school that I'm currently with. When I walked into the school, storytelling as pedagogy was not something in their universe at all. Right? Yes, there was storytelling at a very basic level, but again, limited to only the kindergarten and the nursery sections, maybe grade 1. So what happened was, after doing the initial workshops, we realized that the conversation doesn't end there. Yeah. So most of the time what happens is a storyteller goes in from the outside, does the workshop and exits. And the teachers really don't know how to take it forward from there. And then if they don't have a nurturing environment in the school, then that workshop is just one thing that had happened in the beginning of the year and it's done and dusted, right? So that is where, luckily for me, the school wanted someone to take this effort forward and gave it a 2 to 3 year experimentation period. They were willing to pursue with it for that long to see what changes can be brought in, and they knew that something like this was going to be difficult to achieve right from the first year itself. So therefore, my role as a storyteller and as an educator changed drastically. So I was, until that point, used to going in outside as an outsider, outside in. Now I had to work inside out, right? So understanding how the system works, understanding each teacher's personality, understanding what makes that person tick, all of these, and then a lot of hand holding, a lot of coaching, and giving them feedback, telling them that you can do it and don't worry if you fail the first time, allowing them the freedom to experiment in their classroom, because teacher agency is not something that you ever see in Indian schools, right? Most schools, teachers cannot say no, that this is something that is difficult for me to do. Give me time, give me space. These are not conversations that you will ever hear. So it's not just about learning how to tell a story or putting storytelling pedagogy in place. It is working with the mindsets of the teachers. The management may have a great vision. They may want to do this, but ultimately the people who are taking it forward are the teachers. So I would say that, it helps to have one person dedicated to the effort, somebody who can hold this whole thing up for the teachers to and scaffold the learning for them. Because see, teachers are like children. But as learners, we are all the same. If I tell you go and write a paragraph on something, you won't know where to begin. I have to tell you, what are the points that you need to cover. I need to tell you where you can go look for information. I need to tell you this is what a model paragraph looks like. Then I can expect you to give me something, an output of value, right? So the process is very much the same, even when you're training teachers to become storytellers or story educators. So there is a long hand-holding, process that needs to be put in place. The question is, of course, how many schools are willing to invest in someone like this, or even identify someone from within the system who can become a storytelling lead. Schools are doing it now. Very few of them in the country are certainly doing it. But I think the conversation needs to be much more amplified. Obviously, the ideal would be to have every school create a position for a storytelling specialist. And this is not something that has not been done. Like Dr. Swati just said, it's been done in 1932. But I think it just hasn't come out enough. And in the West, a storyteller in residence is a very sought after sort of position. Library educators, they are also great resources to have. A person who can become the bridge between the library and the classroom and become a help for the teacher to, teach through storytelling. So all of these are positions that are available that I think our schools now have to start thinking about. We've already lost a lot of time, but I think now that the NEP is kind of is at least saying the right things, but now the schools have to really wake up and start figuring out how to make this workable in their environment.
Yes, I think the challenges of working with schools is so immense, because starting from the leadership to the team which has to do it, they have to begin with from a place of empathy. That yes, there are troubles, there are problems, there will be resistance, and it shouldn't go in with your boxing gloves, should go in with open arms. Let's sit down and talk, and let's find out where are the hurdles. Let's try and solve it. If why are you saying a no? It's like handling a rejection well. Let's hear it from Vikram. Vikram, you work with schools, and that's what you do. You go and convince schools to open up a heritage lab. I want to know, please give me tips. How do we approach schools to open up a story lab in their schools? And a story can teach anything. I want to learn how to do that. Tell us where one should begin.
Well, the answer is quite simple. The school, I see the schools as a single body where there are two sets of decision makers. One is the management, which has the control of money, and one is the principal, or sometimes the principal enters that money wala part, and there is a whole team under the principal which looks after the academics and how we can make our education system better, or how our students can learn better. Now, the one that is looking after the learning part, they would always say that yes, this story thing or whatever new idea you bring in that can help. But then the management would say that I am going to shell out X amount extra for what you're bringing in. And I've been running this school for last maybe 50 years or 100 years. We have got legacy schools. Everything has been working fine. Then why this sudden change? Why do I invest so much money extra? So you just need to complete the cycle, understand your audience. Your first target audience is the one who's taking that financial decision. Convince that person that this is actually viable for you in long run. Because what will happen is, if you are bringing a story is not going to teach you one subject. One story actually impacts multiple subjects or different topics from multiple subjects. So it's actually integrated learning. So where your 4 teachers are spending 35 to 40 minutes each period in different classes, what we are going to do is 4 teachers into 40 minutes, or 1 teacher within 40 minutes is teaching those 4 topics. And then those 4 teachers can just build upon it and take it further. So actually we are reducing your entire load to 1/4. So you got 3/4 more time to do the rest of the work. Now, all this economics. So first, we as storytellers, there is a big problem with the artist. We are so much in love with our art form that we can't think beyond that. And most of the time, whatever art form it be, painter, dancer, singer, storyteller, whatever, we are not good in finances or business management or marketing. We cannot sell ourselves. We need to change that, or like Deeptha said, that there is a position that we need to create in schools, and some schools are already understanding. Well, storytellers also need to invest in agents who understand this gap and bridge it. I think that would help.
You're going back to the topic which we did yesterday, which was storytelling as a career. And this was the pain point yesterday. Everybody had these open wounds to be covered up. But you're doing that again today, which is a good thing. Good. Thank you for telling us that. Tell me something. This is a question to all the 3 panelists. So Vikram touched upon something which I was going to ask later, which is the interconnectedness of a story. Now, any particular story can have multiple outcomes, right? It can have a math, a science. It can be also across grades, something which is appropriate for grade 1, and then the same story can have an appropriate lesson for grade 8 or another subject, right? Now, we also know that teachers work in silos in school, or they work with their subject teachers, or they work for a grade. And mostly in the higher classes, perhaps teachers go with, there'll be a head of math who will do, okay, what are we doing, blah, 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 that kind of a thing. I feel that's my gut is that if we can create platforms or groups or cohorts of teachers to come and mingle, to share the knowledge, this concept, the story, because again, subjects are all about being a subject matter expert. You know, a language teacher may not know the science concept very well and may completely miss out on that science concept in a story or not be able to spot it. Likewise, for a science teacher may not be very good in language, right? How, do we need to create these systems while experimenting or exploring the space for workshops, learning, creating material, labs, for this cross-cultural, let's say, not cross-cultural, cross-dimensional, subject-wise intermingling of teachers to create better content? What's your take?
I want to add to this. We already have that setup. It's called staff room.
Nobody uses the staff room for that.
What happens is, you go to any school, and you have so many teachers here, you all will agree with me. There is a sphere or a rectangular room, and every human being in that room is facing towards the wall. Nobody is looking at each other. That room is full of knowledge at all levels, all layers, all complexities, full of ideas and talents. But they don't even look at each other. The only time they look at each other is good morning, good evening. Ma'am, kal kya khaya tha? Aaj kya bana kar laye ho? Kal kahan ghumne gaye? I mean, or they would just pick their snack box or tiffin box and just rotate it in the room. I got this. Would you like to have it? What else are we doing in staff rooms? Why can't an art teacher talk to a physics teacher or a physics teacher talk to a sports teacher? We now even have movies which have explained that this can be done. But we are not doing it. I don't know if it's called ego. I don't know what factor you want to bring it in. Every person has a different excuse because I've had this discussion with many schools, but somehow teachers are not comfortable talking to each other about what they are going to teach next in the classroom. So
yes,
I think
that's the problem. I agree. That is the problem. Now, how do we answer that problem? How do we beat that?
One thing that I came up with probably they are not comfortable talking to each other in the same staff room. So maybe a teacher sitting in Delhi can talk to the teacher sitting in Guwahati or in Coimbatore of the same subject of the same grade or similar type of school, and they can help each other. Or a network which is like Ritupana just mentioned about cohort, a network that is spread across India where teachers are talking to each other and maybe they are anonymous. Maybe they want to put a problem forward, but they don't want to tell other colleagues because maybe his or her principal is also on that network and they don't want to know that this teacher doesn't know the answer to this question. Let it be anonymous and let there be anonymous replies. Let's save your egos if that can help a child or hundreds of children in that school. So maybe that can be one of the solutions that came to my mind.
Create a bigger platform where teachers can intermingle and share. Yes, Dr. Vats.
It's very important for us to understand that there are three aspects which we are taught as teachers. They are called the learning maxims, which is known to unknown, simple to complex, and concrete to abstract. I think and I have used them as an administrator also, because when you are trying to bring in change in any system, you need to keep these in mind. So when we say simple to complex, let each teacher start with a target of one concept a week will be taught through stories. Choice is theirs. So you go from simple to complex. Complex means now I'm going to increase the number of concepts that you will teach through stories. Known to unknown. It's very important that we give these teachers some ideas, some concrete examples of how teaching through stories happens. Otherwise, it's a totally unknown territory that you are just throwing them into. And concrete to abstract. It becomes very, very important for teachers to understand they are the subject experts. So let me now decide that these are the choices of stories I have, which story best suits my subject. And when we start doing things in a group, I have noticed teachers resist it. Let it be an individual gain first before they become a group and try to do things in a group. I have always seen that when you put teachers in a group, there are always fights. because one person does more work, the other people are lazy, they did not participate, or फिर तू तू मैं शुरू हो जाती है, and then that backbiting starts and all that. I feel it is better. We are a competitive nation. We are a tiger moms. It's always best to pit them against each other. कि चलो ये हमारा agenda है इस week का. हम every one of us is going to do one concept through a story, and every week have a coffee session with your teachers. Chai bolo, jo bhi bolo, chai pe charcha bolo, jo bhi hai, where they come not as staff room teachers, but as silent mentors of each other, and they do a demo. When you did a B.Ed, we had peer reviews. We had to review a peer lesson. I think it's the same concept that you need to bring in when you are trying to bring in this new pedagogy in your school that is going to bring such a mammoth change in the mindsets of teachers. So it's not a one size fits all. What may have worked for you as a school may not work for another school. So I think it's important for the heads to understand that, yes, I want this change in my school. Now, how do I achieve it? Copying another school may not help. Your teachers are completely different. Their teachers are completely different. And when it comes to too much work, I have to say here, I am sorry. I don't like it when teachers say there is too much work. You knew about the teaching profession when you became a teacher. So stop grumbling. It's very important that teachers stop grumbling. That's why we are respected, but we are not paid. So it is very, very important for us to stop grumbling about these stupid things that I don't have time, too much of work. I can understand government teachers grumbling because they are given all kinds of work. Election ke time, vaccination ke time, they have the right to grumble, not us in the private sector. I've been a teacher, so with complete full rights, I am saying this. It is important for us to understand our work. It is important for us to put ourselves into our work and to keep changing with the times. Otherwise, right now we are the most respected profession. वो अभी बहुत जल्द बदलने वाला है. So it is very, very important. If you want to be paid well, prove that you are worth it, and then fight for that. So that is a separate story. We'll come into that later on. A teacher pays, which can be quite a scary topic. But this is what I believe. I believe it can't be a one size fits all. It will have to be something that they sit with people like you, people like Deeptha, and understand, or people like Vikram, that, okay, we want to bring in this change. These are our roadblocks. Ab ये हमारे solutions है. अब आप बताओ आप क्या बता रहे हो. I've noticed in the comments also, many people just come with the problems. ये हमारा problem है, ये हमारा roadblock है. No, I always say, don't come to me with a problem. Come to me with 2 solutions, and I will help you find out which is the better solution. That's the mindset.
Absolutely. And if you want to look for solutions, listen to stories. Every story will have a problem, and there will be a story. If you're a storyteller, you will be more aligned for the solution. Uske baad kya hua? We all are interested in that, right? So that's what, go chase a solution. Don't focus on the problem. The problem will get solved. Deeptha, your 2 bits on working with teachers, and you're doing it. That's why I want to hear from you.
Right. So, what Vikram and Dr. Swati said are all, important and valid points. I think since you started off asking about interdisciplinary learning and teaching and getting teachers to collaborate, I think what's important is the way in which our assessments are structured. Look, ultimately, if a child is going to go and face an exam where he or she has to just write an answer to the question, then telling a great story in the classroom is not going to have the desired impact. Yes. So I think somewhere our assessment mechanisms also have to change. So if a child is not being asked to answer in the form of a story, if a story is not a legitimate way of checking for comprehension and understanding, then why would a teacher then take all the trouble to, create a storytelling pedagogy? Right. So I think it's good to start with the end in mind in some cases. And this is one such feature. So I think if schools now, start putting formative assessments in place where a child who says, this is my understanding of trigonometry, and this is I want to present it in the form of a story. It should be graded the way an answer for solving a numerical problem is graded, right? And this will also cater to the multiple learning styles that a child has in the classroom, right? Not every child learns the same way. Some children respond to stories, some children respond to hard facts, numbers. So we've got to look at all of these issues. It's not like Dr. Swati said, not a one size fits all. You can put the best teachers in a group and get them to create the best lesson plans. But if the end result is a child writing an answer to a 5-mark question, there's no fun for the teacher, there's no fun for the child, right? So I think that's an important factor to consider as well. And yes, of course, teachers, I think, also need to have their own mastermind groups or their professional learning networks, as we call them. I think it's very important for teachers to seek. They may not have resources within their environments in the school. And if that doesn't happen, that shouldn't stop you from looking for it outside. There are learning networks outside. I belong to one such network. It's called LCORE. It's called the Learning Community of Reflective Practitioners. And some of my cohort members are here. It's so nice to see them. So we meet, several times in a month. We meet as a large group. We meet in small groups. Each of us has identified action research projects within our own environments, which we are now in the, writing about. We are also, at this point, I want to say that working on a very exciting project called Scientist Biographies, which is to teach science as a way of thinking. So we are creating stories of these scientists to encourage scientific temper in children, because teaching of science, again, is not just answering questions and formulae, right? So what is it that inspired a scientist to do the great things that he or she did? What were the obstacles? What were some of the moments of epiphany that he or she had? All these are great stories to bring into the classroom. So we are, and we are a diverse group of teachers. And most of the time, we are just that one teacher from the school who is part of this network, right? But what it does is that it just opens up our thinking so much that we are then able to take it back into our school networks and plug it in there. Have these small conversations. Look for one teacher who you think has that spark. And you'll know by virtue of being in the school for, 3 or 4 years, you will know that here's someone, I think, who will warm up to this conversation. And just start by talking to that person about what this concept is. And tell her maybe, hey, would you like to try this out in your classroom? And just over a conversation, get this whole thing, and then the ripples will spread slowly. This is a time-consuming process. We are not going to have results overnight. The NEP has just come in today, but the impact of that is going to be seen 10 years from now. But this is the time that we have to really put all of these, this infrastructure, so to speak, in place. And I would really urge for teachers to look for these networks that are available. Some of them are closed, some of them are open. So please go and, make use of what is available. We can't keep, like Dr. Swati said, we can't just keep saying, no, this is not available, this is not there. A lot of stuff is available. We need to be seekers, and the answers will come.
And where there is none, you create one. We are creating
Absolutely.
one. We are creating one at Your Story Bag, only a teachers only community, which will be on similar lines as the community that Deeptha is part of, which is to go actively seek stories and to create them for ourselves and for the world outside. We're doing a boot camp on stories in the classroom on Saturday. So it's only for people, only for teachers, not for storytellers, it's only for school teachers to register and come in, because we are very serious that we want to create that community of storytelling teachers who want to actively invest in themselves, find solutions, not problems. Okay, we know there are the problems, we are trying to solve it. Let's create a formidable network which is solution oriented. Let's find the stories, let's find ways to integrate it, let's fight the battles together. We are here to help. And like you just saw such great speakers, everybody's talking about solution finding. Let's do that together. Yeah. Okay. Now, one question which I have is, let's talk about the ecosystem. Now we know the problems are there. We've addressed it. There are solutions. How can we all come together to build this ecosystem together? I have a lot of storytellers who are coming from small towns. Okay. And they are, in some towns and cities, they are the only storyteller. So when they walk up to a school and they say that I am a storyteller and I want to, come and tell stories, they're invited to come and entertain. Then that's it. Now, beyond that, the school is not willing to bring them in. There are many reasons. One is because they are not subject matter experts. So obviously, they are not mathematics teachers or science teachers or English teachers to be able to tell stories. And in fact, which is a very sad thing, some of my storytellers are forced to tell in English because the school will not take a Hindi speaking storyteller. Now, these are sad realities, but I'm the only one who keeps saying, please use your mother tongue if you have to speak in your mother tongue. But, talking about, this is what the ecosystem is. Do we need content creators? Do we need edupreneurs? Do we need more teacher trainers? Do we need more, do storytellers need to equip themselves with appropriate classroom methodologies, because they need to speak the vocabulary that the teachers are speaking, or the methodologies which already they're used to, right? So what is it that we need today to strengthen the ecosystem? This is a common question to all three of you.
Can I take this first?
Yes.
I think storytellers will have to decide whether they want to be as entertainers, or do they want to become part of the pedagogy of teaching. Because just like we are saying, teachers will have to change, storytellers will also have to change. So are they doing it as just entertainment, or are they doing it to help the school understand how to teach through stories? That is a mindset change that storytellers will have to go through. Because the kind of storytellers that I know, many of them are very successful, but most of them are then only seen as a Children's Day performance or a Christmas party performance, and they are reduced to that, So it's very, very important for the storytellers now to change their mindsets and approach schools with the right proposals, that this is an entertainment storytelling session, and this is a session which is going to teach your teachers how to use stories in the curriculum with relevant examples. Because we can't just say to teachers, देखो ये story है, अभी आप इसका lesson plan बनाओ. You will have to give them an example, and that has to come from the storyteller. So if we want storytellers and teachers to work together, both will have to put in that much of effort.
Deeptha,
I couldn't agree more. Like I mentioned earlier also, there was a huge shift in my perspective around storytelling the moment I walked into the school, and I realized I have to be here for more than one workshop. So, so the environment in every school is different. Things change every day. You can go in with a grand plan, but if the teacher's timetable is so packed, there's nothing you can do, and you have to work with that reality, right? So storytellers need to have an in-depth understanding of how the school system functions, an in-depth understanding of pedagogy and content creation. You can bring in experts, but it's important for you to know how each of these things work, for you to be able to amalgamate it and present it as a whole. So today, the storyteller's role has moved from, let me tell you a story, to let's see how we can bring this story to life, right? And that's where the real work is, I feel, for the storytelling community. So we have to do a lot of homework to educate ourselves about how schools function, how teachers function, how to write a great lesson plan. I believe that there was a question around that at some point. And therefore, help teachers create content. I feel if storytellers can become collaborators in this process and position themselves as as complements and not competitors to teachers, I think that's a very important way to look at your role as a storyteller as well, because the storyteller is not here to just entertain, and then you don't want the children saying, "Oh, I want the storyteller back. I don't want the teacher," because the teacher is not telling the story the way the storyteller is telling it. Yeah. So we need to look for ways in which we can help teachers become good storytellers, and storytellers become good educators, even if they may not have a background in education. So, yeah.
I am one such person. I don't have a background in education. And I must confess, and I won't share that with you. I never thought I will ever teach. And I always say I don't use the word teach. I said I facilitate learning. It's up to the learner to pick up anything from the story and learn organically. But the way I've built my system is because I was invited to teach a module in Delhi University. And how did I taught myself how to teach storytelling, by the way. And how did I do it? Because I asked my students, tell me what are the subjects that you could not understand when you were in school? What were the chapters which were difficult? And when my students told me, and they had just finished school and they had gone to college, so they were in the second year of college when they started learning storytelling, they said, I never understood preservation of food. So I said, okay, let's create a story around it. Okay, and then another topic and another topic. And that's how we learned to create stories to simplify concepts. So we went back to breaking down, okay, what did this chapter teach you? A few definitions, a few examples. Let's create a story with this example, and then let's see how it can make it more really fun and easy to understand. So that was the story pedagogy of understanding how story pedagogy really works, how I taught myself, and I taught for 5 years with students. And that's what went inside while we designed the curriculum. Yeah.
Yeah.
Vikram, your tips to storytellers?
I think most of the things have already been said. But yes, a revolution is required. And there are, besides what has been said, there is one more element that we have not addressed yet. Let me bring it forward. I have seen a level of gender bias also. Look at this group right now. I can see Vikram Siridhar. I can see myself. How many men are there? I don't know if this is a valid point here or not. But the idea here is that somehow when we talk about education, there are so many stereotypes that come to our mind, and we just start running in one direction. And there is this one activity that I often do in my classes. I pull up some buildings because I use architecture as one of the elements to teach. I pull up photographs of some buildings and I ask them what religion comes to your mind when you look at this picture. And I have not got any right answer because of those stereotypes that we have built. The Red Taj Mahal of Agra is often considered as a Muslim monument, whereas Red Taj Mahal's original name is Roman Catholic Cemetery. It's a Catholic cemetery. While the shrines in Srinagar appear like a Buddhist or a Hindu structure, but they are Islamic because the region requires that. So somehow that has come into the connection of storytelling education also. So when we talk about revolution, we need to reinvent the wheel, and I mean it. We have to go back to our drawing board, start thinking out of the box, forget what we know already, and rework from scratch, and maybe we can come with something new. And one more very, very, very important point, we've already discussed it in different terms. I'm just rephrasing it with a different language. Let us start understanding our audience and let us start localizing the content. If you're talking to a student in, like in case of Deeptha, if you're talking to someone in Chandigarh, you cannot bring that story to Kerala or Tamil Nadu. The context has to change, otherwise the kid will not understand or connect with you. So yes, like Swati ma'am and Deeptha, you both have said, we cannot ask our teachers or tell our teachers, here's the curriculum, please take it, go send it in your school or to your principal and convince your principal, this is the best thing to do. It will never work. We can only give you a framework. Or as a storyteller, if you are going to train teachers, you can only give a framework, and the teacher who is inside the classroom will have to create a story. Probably, if the teacher is teaching grade 6, every year he or she will have to create a new story because the new grade 6 that has come in may not understand the way the previous grade understood. Or maybe the same grade understands 2 different stories for the same topic. That's where the work of teacher comes in. So localize the content and really understand the background of your audience, your students, or whoever you're talking to, because that will change the game.
May I jump in? So I wanted, just taking the thread from what Vikram said. So I want to again bring in the project on the scientist biographies that we are working on. It's going through exactly this process that he outlined. Now we are a bunch of people who are not all science teachers, right? And not all teachers, because I am in that group. I am not a, I'm not a trained teacher in that sense. But because I understand stories, and there are people who understand science, and then there are people who want to create stories by learning both science and storytelling at the same time. We have this, beautiful mix of people who are constantly going through this iterative process. So a story gets made once, then it goes through a rigorous process of reviewing and editing. Then it gets taken into an actual school classroom where it is piloted, and that teacher who is the storyteller at that point gives feedback on what she felt or he felt and how the students responded to the story. Then we plug it back and refine the story till we think it's ready to go into a publishable format, right? And I think this is the level of rigor that is needed, which currently I feel is lacking in storytelling in education. So you can't pull out a story from the internet and take it into the classroom and hope for it to work. Yeah, or even any book for that matter. You have to understand how it's going to work for your environment, for your local culture, and then put in all of the tweaks that are required before you can say that I have a winning formula in my hand. So to whoever asked the question about, is there a way in which I can create a story-based lesson plan in a snap? I'm reminded of this Zen story, which I think many of you may have heard. There was this Zen master who was considered an absolute expert in martial arts. And one day, one of his students went up to him and said, "Master, I want to learn this martial art, and I want to excel at it, and I want to be the best that ever it was. So tell me, how long is it going to take me?" And the master listened to him and very casually said, well, 10 years. And the student was obviously not convinced. He said, 10 years? No. I promise to work really hard. I promise to train day and night. I promise to do everything that it takes. So now tell me, how long is it going to take me? And then the master just said, 20 years. So this is a time-consuming, rigorous process, and you have to be in it for the long haul. It's going to take high degrees of collaboration from teachers, storytellers, content creators, edupreneurs, people like Ritu, who have, who are creating platforms like this for people to come together. So this has to be an ongoing, organic conversation.
We heard this yesterday and we're hearing it again. It is an ongoing process. You cannot wake up one day and say, I have had enough of it and this is it. दुनिया में कुछ नहीं होगा, दुनिया ऐसी ही चलेगी, education ऐसा ही चलेगा. Remember, each one of us is part of the society. We are part of the problem if we don't address that problem. Yeah. Okay, we're quickly wrapping up for this end of this evening. I've asked most of the questions that the audience had sent us, and we've some way or the other addressed in our answers. And I can see that we have a huge number of people who are sitting right here, and they've sat through the entire evening. Any questions, if you have, please, I'd recommend you maybe if you can type it down, or if you want, you are free to unmute yourself now and ask. Yes, Sridevi, you have a question.
Thank you for the wonderful panel discussion. It's really enlightening and definitely would like to use it in the schools that I'm working with right now. So I basically work on inculcating reading abilities through stories. And I do storytelling, and then I, make them do a lot of activities based on the stories, and that is how I teach. I would like to take this forward in schools. So this is what I'm really trying to do right now. The difficulty that I'm facing is, or whatever, if you say there is story pedagogy, if I'm taking it to the schools. So the first thing is, you say that there is one representative for stories who will take up the entire responsibility to do it. And it has to be really backed up by the principal, as you say, it has to be really backed up by the principal. and whatever we need to say, that has to happen. So when we start working on annual day event happens, everything, turns upside down. It's very difficult to put it up in a school environment. I want to know exactly like how we can crack this and how we can approach this into schools and get this done, because I have few contacts with good schools, and I would like to take this forward to schools. And I want to know how do you approach it in the initial stages, and how do you lay out a structure to it? Is there a way that you have found out? I just wanted to know about it.
Ooh, do you want anyone specific to answer this question, or is it open to anyone?
It's open. I would like to know if anyone can take this.
Okay, I believe I can answer some of that and then open it out to the other panelists as well. So what levels are you engaged with currently, Sridevi?
No, currently I'm engaged with children with difficulty in reading because of this pandemic. There is a lot of gap in their learning, so I'm doing it. But right now, what I'm trying to look forward is taking up this storytelling pedagogy as such and going into school. So you can enlighten with that concept.
Okay, right. So my suggestion would be for you to begin with one grade at a time and don't try to overreach, right? So work with one grade that you think you're really comfortable with. And like we discussed in the program today, try to look at it as a solution that you can take to the school, which means you've got to identify the pain points. You've got to understand where the school system is, lacking, and how your solution can then add value to what a teacher is already doing. So, which means you will have to sit down and look at what learning outcomes there are for that grade and for that subject that you plan to, be a story educator for. And then say, okay, look, these are the learning outcomes that the CBSE has laid down. And there is always a problem for the teacher to make that learning outcome become tangible, right? That's where the struggle is. What do I do to make sure that this learning outcome is achieved? And if you can then identify a story that can help you do that. Here again, I want to clarify that you will not be able to do stories for every learning outcome. Okay, let's not be ambitious there also. There are some cases where you can just not do anything with a story. Anyway, but I think your homework is really to look at what that grade requires, what that subject requires, and then create some sort of a kit and say, look, these are the kind of lessons that you have for term 1 in this particular subject. These are the chapters, and these are the stories that I believe will go along with these chapters to help you achieve these learning outcomes. That will then help the child answer these questions in the exam. So it has to be an end-to-end solution. We have gone past the stage where we can simply go and say that I'm a storyteller, give me work. I think we've gone past that stage, and it's been pointed out enough already in this conversation. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Definitely, I will work on a single grade, and also, as you said, specifically with the lesson plans to integrate and then take it forward will be the right way, I guess. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else with another question? I think Ruchi had a question, which is what we also had in our list, but we sort of let it go because of time. But Ruchi's asked it openly, so let's ask that. So what she's basically asking is that, a lot of learning happens outside the classroom. School learning happens outside the classroom, thanks to tuitions, extra classes, and things like that. What can, let's say, service providers or let's say other tutors, how can they, bring storytelling, which should have ideally happened in the classroom, but can happen outside? Can it work? Dr. Vats?
Yeah, of course it can. I think, we are trying to approach this whole thing with a problematic mindset more than a solution-based mindset. It's very important for us to look at the problems in front of us. If there are 20 problems, how many of these problems do I have a solution for? Let me start from there. because otherwise we will only be, throwing darts in the dark with a blindfold on. So it is very, very important for us to understand that, yes, children will go for tuitions. So what? But did the child understand the concept in the classroom? Today, why are children actually going to tuitions? Because they can't understand the concept being taught in the classroom. That is the whole reason why they are going for classes, extra classes, etc. I think if you can even prove uh, or identify three difficult concepts that children usually struggle with, and how can I teach them through stories, and then how can I prove it in my classroom, that's a start. Rather than having a goal which is too large, that I want to do away with this whole thing, it will never work like that. As I said, baby steps. We have to learn to take baby steps. Step by step, things will happen. Identify what you already have the solution for and what you want the solution for. And I think it's slowly become a ladder that will help you reach the success.
Slow and steady wins the race. Stories teach us that. It's not a race. Maybe it's a race against time to bring a revolution, to bring a change. Is the race with time so that you can do it in your lifetime before you run out and make a difference. So keep at it and don't lose heart. And I'm sure you will have more questions. Please reach out to us speakers. If you have anything very specific, you can write to us for anyone. I know maybe there's an overload of emotions and thoughts and feelings right now, like it happens with everyone. One last thing which I would like to show before we move on, because I said that during the discussion, is that this weekend we have a boot camp. We're calling it Stories in the Classroom, and a boot camp is something which is different from a workshop. A workshop, I'll teach you techniques, but in a boot camp, we'll actually find stories. We'll create stories as a group. It's going to be fun, games, dialogue, conversation, and it's only reserved for in-service school teachers. So it's not open to storytellers or even members from my tribe. So this is because we are trying to create a community of educators, and it's important to be willingly come in. It's marginally priced because we want to keep it an exclusive space. So that's what it will have. You will get an email about it, and I look forward to seeing you there if you're a school teacher. Yeah.
So, Rituparna, do we have to register separately again for
Yes,
that?
you have to register separately because this will be a paid.
You will be sending out a link for
I
that.
will. I will be sending an email with all the necessary details. Tomorrow you will have it. So that's all we have time for tonight. Thank you so much, Deeptha, Vikramjit, Dr. Vats. I think my heart is growing fuller and fuller and fuller. I hope I don't land up with a cardiac arrest at the end of this storied way, because these conversations are so deep-rooted, and like everybody else is saying in the chat, I'm getting this every night. The generosity with which our speakers are coming and sharing openly, liberally, honestly, it's helping a lot of us create a deeper understanding of why we must keep doing what we are doing. I think that's one thing that we've understood. Yes.
Ridupurna, that rush that you are feeling will not lead to a heart attack, because when we are excited, the dopamine rushes.
It's dopamine, yeah.
Dopamine is a happy chemical, which is also released through storytelling.
Absolutely. Why do you think I'm a storyteller? Because I like this rush. And I think, and some people who know me will know that I'm addicted to stories, and I'm more addicted to conversations like this, because this is fuel.
Absolutely.
That is a release. This is the fuel. You need to fuel yourself before you can run. No, any engine, you will need some fuel to make it run. And if you don't fuel yourself from time to time, you will run out of steam. So that we don't run out of steam, we need to keep doing these conversations, find our communities, build networks, so that we invest in ourselves.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? Great. Thank you so much, everyone. And good night. We'll see you tomorrow night with another topic and another theme.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
And thank you, Shikha, for being such a lovely co-host.
Thank you, Ritubana, for giving this opportunity, because as a storyteller, I'm just finding my way into this, and all these conversations are making my thoughts more clear where and what I want to do as a storyteller now.
Great, that's the purpose. That's the purpose.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.